See, to be more influential in any conversation, all you need is 3 ingredients. Just 3 ingredients in conversation. The first is an ingredient called curiosity. Behind curiosity is an ingredient Chris Doe talked about, a few others have touched on, called empathy. And then behind empathy, we've got an ingredient called courage. You're like, that's not that revolutionary, Phil. What's the big idea? These are all words you've heard before, yes? But why those words, and why in that specific order? Curiosity, empathy, courage. Well, let's start with curiosity. What is the alternative if you show up to a conversation without curiosity? You're showing up with certainty. You're showing up sure. Ever found yourself in a conversation with somebody who's so sure of themselves, so certain of their point of view, that the more sure they are of themselves, the less sure you're becoming them? Kind of like, really now, huh? Creates friction, makes you want to push away from them. It's ironic that high levels of certainty create high levels of uncertainty. If you'd like to create certainty, the tool to get there is curiosity. Why is curiosity such an important tool? Because it stops you being an advice monster. Has anybody in this room ever delivered exceptional advice for entirely the wrong problem? It's too easy to do. See, just prior to Christmas last year, I was at home at my house in England, and my soon-to-be 17-year-old daughter comes to me around the kitchen island looking for advice. At least that's what I thought she came for. And as she was sharing a story of something that was happening in her life, what I responded to her with was a sequence of words that I wish to never say again. And the sequence of words I reached for were the words, "When I was in your shoes." And then I looked down at her feet, 16-year-old girl, and realized I could never wear shoes that looked like that. Not ever. And I caught myself about to jump into advice monster mode. Zipped up, took about 22 minutes of being strategically curious, gave approximately 0 advice, and she comes out of the conversation saying, "I think I know what I'm going to do, Dad." It was about the exact same advice as what I would have given her. However, she got there all by herself. A challenge I have for you, and this is remarkably ironic. It's one of the only pieces of direct advice I'm going to give you today. So please write this piece of direct advice down. Stop giving advice. A challenge I have for all of you is, could you live an entire day of your life giving approximately 0 advice? Instead, just remain curious for long enough to understand the other person's context. I know that you all are experts in this room, but you don't get to be an expert by telling somebody how much you know about a thing. You have to know about how your thing affects their world. You're content creators, correct? If you insert your content before you've earned their context, all you did is make a noisy situation noisier. You have to earn their context first. When you're curious for long enough, it dances you towards that position of empathy. Chris talked about empathy. Still, empathy is a misunderstood word. People often confuse it with sympathy. That's a very different thing. The best definition I've ever heard for the word empathy comes from a speaker-author friend of mine by the name of John Acuff. And John Acuff defines empathy as to care about what the people you care about care about. I can't do better than that, so I'm borrowing John's. Yet let's explore this a touch. Who is the person that you care about the most in the world? If you're in any doubt, Mason, remember the high school photo. 300 faces wide. What was the first face you looked for? Right, it was you. I said this to somebody in the audience the other day, and she got really mad. Like, really mad. And she stood up, and it was a small room of about 6,000 people. And she stood up and she said, "I have to disagree." She said, "I am not the most important person in my life. My children are the most important people in my life." And she really meant it. She was mad. And remember, there's like 5,999 people watching this interruption. So I look kindly back at her, and I smile, and I said, "That's because they're yours." And she shuffled back to her chair very, very calmly. Because the reason that she thought her kids were the most important people in her life is because they were her kids. Would you like to know the least influential word on the planet that you are using all of the time? The least influential word on the planet is something that shows up in your vocabulary day in, day out. It is costing you a fortune. This one change in your world will make you more influential in every piece of copy you ever write, every conversation you ever have. The least influential word in the planet is the word I. Yet how many times do you start an email? I was hoping, I was looking, I think that, what I believe is. And if you think it's okay, we don't use the word I because we use the word we. The overuse of the word we means you could quite literally we all over your customers. Most of them are not going to like you. Most of them are not going to be too big of a fan of that. The swap is to swap I's for you's. There's a big difference between you saying what I think you should do is versus what you may wish to do is. There's a big difference between me saying what I offer is versus what you get when you choose to work with. See the difference? Swap your I's for you's and you start to demonstrate empathy. I need to prove something and just check. And I'd like you to answer this loud and proud for me. Is now a good time to buy a house, yes or no? Is now a good time to sell a house, yes or no? Yes. Stop it, all of you! This is one of the biggest things that this industry as a whole does to lack empathy. Because the answer is maybe. It depends. When you show up and throw up that now is always the time, then you are the boy or girl who cried wolf, right? You are the self-serving individual that says, I'm in the business of serving me, not I'm in the business of serving you. Stop it. Did you know that nobody in the world wants to buy a house? You know that. Nobody. Also, no people want to sell a house. You knew that? People want to buy a house because. People want to sell a house because. If you want to win in today's world, get to know their because. Make all of their conversations about their because. This isn't you helping them sell their house. This is you helping them move to Florida so they can spend more time with their kids because they didn't spend the time with their kids and their grandkids through their working life and they feel guilty about it, so they want to get there now so they can try and make up for lost time. That's their because. And if you don't know that, you're commoditized. Period. I do not need you to be an expert in real estate. I do not need you to be an expert in loans. I do not need you to be an expert in anything you're an expert at. I need you to be an expert in people who also happens to have higher levels of expertise in real estate, mortgages, etc. Your expertise in your sector is table stakes. That gets you in the game. Your knowledge of the person you're looking to help gets you on the podium. Different. You catching this? I want to prove this empathy piece a touch. Who in this world has somebody in their life that could reach out to you with a big ask for how you might be able to help them next weekend? And before that person's got to the end of their ask, you're already ready to say yes. You have those people? And then you have other people that could ask you the exact same ask, that when they ask you, you're like, this weekend? Me? Really? And you got pushback, resistance, friction. Why is it there are some people in your world that you're ready to say heck yes to, and there are others that you're ready to say hell maybe? Why? Because of the relationship. And the relationships that you're ready to say heck yes to are relationships built on high levels of trust. We're in the business of trust. We are so much in the business of trust that we say things like, you can trust me. When you tell somebody that they can trust you, does that increase or decrease trust? Decreases trust. Trust is earned. You don't say you can trust me. I mean, just like to be honest with you for a second, because everything else I've been saying is a lie. Like, what the heck? It's stupid, the things that leave our mouth sometimes. I was with a group of financial advisors a short while ago, another small group, about 3,500 people. They just took themselves through this giant rebrand, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in this rebrand. Their tagline everywhere across the conference was, "We are trusted advisors to our clients." They spent a fortune on this. And I'm on stage, I'm looking at this, I'm at this part of a speech like this, I'm like, people, I'm sorry. You don't get to call yourself that. That is something somebody else gets to call you. If you want to be trusted advisors, don't give that as a badge to yourself. I know you want to earn trust. How do you earn trust? Too few people help you. Well, what you do, if you ping my triangle back up on the screen, you remain curious enough to understand the other person's context. You demonstrate empathy to be relatable. You equal trust. Curiosity plus empathy equals trust. Curiosity plus empathy equals trust. There's a button inside the head of every decision maker on the planet. It's a button that I've learned to call the show me that you know me button. The minute you trigger the show me that you know me button, no longer is it you versus them. It's you and them versus it. Some of us in this room have grown up in the world where I won the sale, I won the listing, I won the business, I won the argument. If you are the winner, what is the other person? Which means you're in the business of creating losers. This is 2024, people, not 1986. What it should be is not me versus you, it's us versus it. Get clear on what the it is, the because that lives behind the results you're trying to achieve for the people, you're in great shape. Which brings us to this third ingredient, this ingredient called courage. And I'm not talking about jump out of an aeroplane courage, like climb a mountain courage, go to war courage. I'm talking about the courage to just ask. Because we know that if you do not ask, you do not get. Has anybody in this room ever asked the big question? The will you marry me question? It's the big question, right? Let's be real. How big a question was it when you asked it? Anybody shooting with 50-50 odds? 60-40 ambition, 75-25, or were you somewhere near certain this was the direction of travel that we're both going in? Right? You might have been nervous, anxious, apprehensive. You might have wanted to ask right, to do it in the right way, that it felt like it came with the right level of compassion and conviction. All of that was true. But you weren't pitching. Right? Just a natural next step in the relationship that we've developed. That's the big ask that I'd like you to make to your clients. When you're curious enough to understand their context, you're empathetic enough to understand their relationship, you're relatable, the courage to make the next big step is not a big ask at all. It's just an invitation to move forward. And I think sometimes we scare ourselves to death about pitching and asking and winning the listing and closing, that we put all this unnecessary pressure on ourselves. When what we can do is just dance our prospects towards the next natural step. We can romance this. We can do it with a little more grace than perhaps has often been positioned. Does that feel better for most of you in this room?